Again, welcome everyone. I'm Joseph Magen, Managing Editor of All Israel News. Happy that you could all join. And we just have Elisa Moed from Traveluya. If you can introduce yourself and explain a little bit about the agenda for this evening.
Sure. Thanks, Joseph. And shalom, everybody. My name is Elisa Moed, and I'm the CEO of Traveluya. We're based in Israel, actually in the Galilee. And first, I just want to thank All Israel News, Joseph, and Joel Rosenberg for everything that you guys do with All Israel, All Arab News to keep people around the world connected and learning about Israel. So thank you for everything that you do on that end. It's so important. And we're very grateful to be partnering with you. And we love offering these virtual tours. And hopefully people will start coming soon on real tour experiences. A little bit about me. I'm from Detroit. I moved here 16 years ago on Aliyah with 4 children and my husband, and very grateful, very blessed to be living here in this wonderful and only home for the Jewish people around the world. And we live up in the Galilee next to Khorazim, which many of you may have heard of. And for 14 years, my company has been providing all sorts of biblical, especially curated biblical tours for many ministries, organizations, universities, and private tours. And they're all privately curated for different groups and for individuals. And as you all know, for the last 21 months, we've been in the midst of a horrific pandemic, and it has caused us to close our borders, which only recently reopened to people from countries that are not red. And so over the last month, we've been starting to welcome, real groups into the country and some individuals. And there are restrictions still, and I'll be happy to speak with anybody about that afterwards, or I'll put my email into the chat if you are interested in learning more about how you can travel within a group or travel on a private individual tour in Israel. So I'll put my address in the chat in a second. And about today's program, well, first of all, a couple of things. If you have questions, please put it into the chat. We will get to them at the end of our session, which will be approximately about 50 minutes today. And so we will get to those questions. Don't worry. We're going to be journeying very deep into God's blessings of nature today and looking at the landscapes of our beautiful biblical reserve of Ne'ot Kedumim. You'll learn a little bit more about that in a minute, but specifically we're going to be looking at the intentional biblical language of our flora and our fruits and their meanings and symbols in Hebrew scripture, and the New Testament. So our very special fall tour today is going to be led by 2 amazing tour guides. Some of you may have met Itamar Ben David. He's with us a lot. He's based in Jerusalem. And we also have Ellie Waller, who is a specialist at Ne'ot Kedumim, a wonderful nature guide. And we're going to take you there now. So I hope you enjoyed the program. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully in Israel one day very, very soon.
Great.
Take it away.
Everyone. And I just want to mention just some of we have Australia here, we have Georgia, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Ontario, Hawaii, Alberta, Canada, Colorado, South Africa, Florida, Georgia, Colorado, Tennessee, California, Washington State, New York, Kentucky, Tennessee, Colorado, Idaho, Ohio. So welcome everyone. I'm in the Judean Hills right outside of Jerusalem, and have a great tour.
Thank you very much, guys. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you, and thank you for inviting us again. Like Elisa said, the borders are now opening and reopening, and we'll be delighted to have you here. And in the meanwhile, it's very, very easy to enter simply virtually to wherever we want. So let's have a nice quick flight from the US across the Atlantic and to the Mediterranean, which is just over here, crossing Spain and Italy and Greece and North Africa. And we're just hovering above Israel right now. So here is Israel. And if you haven't been, or if you're not very familiar with the geography of it, its geography is actually fascinating. As you can see, it's located between 3 different continents. It's Western Asia, basically. It's very close to Africa too, and very, very close to Europe. And our climate areas are also influenced by these three areas. So by these three climatic areas. So let's take a look at the map just over here. We have the Mediterranean just over here on our western border. We have the Sea of Galilee just over here, marked it in red. And then after that, the Dead Sea. And lastly, on the south, we have the Red Sea. These are the main bodies of water that we have in this area. We have the Jordan River flowing from the Hermon Mountain, feeding the Sea of Galilee. And from there, drawing a little blue line over here, all the way to the Dead Sea. Israel is a very small country, but it's extremely diverse, not just in culture and not just the culture of it and its population, but really, as far as nature concerned, it's extremely diverse because of these different areas that we have. We have more of a European weather up in the north, in the northern area of the Golan Heights and the Hermon Mountain. We have Mediterranean weather in the Galilee and Judea and Samaria area, all this central part of the country. And we actually have parts of the Sahara in the Negev Desert. Negev Desert is actually, some parts of it are actually continuation of the Sahara desert. So extremely different weathers within just few hours of drive from the western part of Israel, from the Mediterranean all the way to the Jordan River. It's just an hour 20. Okay, so you're getting the picture. Moving from here to Neot Kedumim, which is in the central part of Israel, as you can see. Neot Kedumim, it's an amazing nature reserve located between Jerusalem on the east. We don't really see Jerusalem, it's just the mountains on the east. This is Highway 443 leading to the coastline, okay, from Jerusalem to the coastline. These are the hills that you see around us are actually the biblical, battlefield of the Maccabees, 2,200 years ago. You can see the greenery over here. All these trees are mainly pine trees that were planted by Israel in the last 70 years. And on the other side, you can see the overgrazed hills of the West Bank. So these are the two areas next to Neot Kedumim. And the park itself is located right over here. And I'm passing it over to our dear Ellie. Ellie.
Hi, everybody. Lovely to meet you all. Yes, I'm telling you about Neot Kedumim, which is a biblical landscape reserve. And the idea was to take the Bible in one hand and a shovel or a spade in the other hand and plant all of the trees and the flowers and the shrubs that are mentioned in the Bible, so that as we walk around the nature reserve, we can understand what it was like to live in biblical times. And when we understand nature, we can understand more about the biblical text, and vice versa. When we read the biblical text, we can understand a little more about nature. For example, our logo, our symbol at Neot Kedumim, you can see on the left the stylized version of the flower, which you see a photograph of. This is the caper bush. These are caper flowers. You may be familiar with capers because you eat them pickled with your smoked salmon, but they're actually the buds, the flowers that have, they're the buds of the flowers of the caper bush. The caper bush also grows out of the Western Wall. And why is it the symbol of Neot Kedumim? Why is this thorny bush the symbol of Neot Kedumim? Because right now it's gone into winter dormancy. And when we walk around the park, it looks like a bunch of dead twigs. And you could ask, well, the groundsmen aren't doing their job. They're not tidying up the park. But we know that when the weather warms up, it's going to burst into life again. There's going to be green leaves and flowers as well. And that's why it's a symbol of Neot Kedumim, because just like the park was, there was nothing growing there. It was barren and it was planted and it came to life. Just like this, this shrub, it looks in the wintertime like it's dead and gone, but it comes to life in the summertime. It's a symbol of the park, a symbol of the state of Israel in general, actually. Yeah.
Okay. take a look at this, Ellie. What can you tell us about this beautiful group here?
Okay, so thanks, Itamar. The park was originally established it had a strong educational element, and we always have lots and lots of students and people coming through to learn about nature, to learn the texts in context. We take our sources and we look at the trees and we look at the flowers and we feel what it was like to walk in the footsteps of our forefathers. There are lots of different areas in the park. It's 625 acres, and it's divided up according to the books of the Bible and different themes of the Bible. Over here, you can see Solomon's pools, and you can see the palm trees, and I can also see
Cypress tree.
Pardon me?
There is a cypress tree over here.
There's a cypress tree as well. Yeah, yeah. And wherever it changes every single day. And according to the seasons, there's always something new and to see, and always surprises. And we also have archaeological archaeological finds in the park, because it was there from over 2,000 years ago. We know the story of the Maccabees that started around this region from the city of Modi'in, which is actually where I live, 15 minutes away from the park. And then the Hasmoneans came, and there are a lot of caves in the park, and they were able to hide there from their enemies. And what we try to say is, when people come to Naot Kadumim, they're going to discover their inner Israelite. They're going to go take a deep dive into the Bible and really feel what it's like to be a character from the Bible. We have sheep and goats, so we can have a shepherding experience, and we try to have hands-on activities. Yeah.
Very cool.
So
yeah. So with that, I want to move on to our presentation that will help us understand what is the story of both Naot and the biblical nature. And I want to take you up to the gallery to a special sukkah of a lady that is with us here.
that's me.
Lisa, maybe you can tell us about your experience.
Our first sukkah up in the galley, we just moved up here a few months ago, and this was our first sukkot up here overlooking the Sea of Galilee in the background.
Absolutely. So gorgeous sukkah, and I only have a small balcony, so I definitely can't host too many people. So you surely hosted more than just the 7 righteous like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses, and Aaron, etc. But now we want to show you some special sukkot. So this is in Naot Kadumim, and Ellie, our dear Ellie, will tell us more about it.
Yeah, so at Naot Kadumim, we have a section which is a sukkah exhibition. And because we ask ourselves, what makes a sukkah a sukkah? What makes a tabernacle a tabernacle? And we took the sources where the rabbis discuss the laws of what makes a sukkah kosher or proper. And they are found in the Mishnah and in the Talmud. And we took those books, we opened them, and we made life-size versions of the different kinds of sukkot that they had discussed. For example, we're going to give you a couple of examples. Here we have a double-story sukkah. And the question that is asked is, are both of those stories kosher? Because just in a nutshell, what makes a sukkah is you've got to have a certain amount of walls, and you've got to have a special thatched roof, which is not too, it's got to be a temporary dwelling, basically. So it can't be too sturdy and stable, and it can't be too rickety that it's going to fall down. So you have to ask yourself a question, is this okay? And with this one in particular, the top one is definitely okay. The bottom one might be problematic because you've got the floor in between. Next.
So maybe I'll just add one little thing about it. The idea is that you have to see the sky through the roof. That's extremely important. And in these days that everyone lives in apartment buildings, we don't always have a balcony with a sky above our heads. Go ahead.
Okay. Here we've got a sukkah. I call it an A-shaped sukkah. And the question that you have to, where you've just taken palm branches on one side and palm branches on another side. And the question that is asked is this kosher? But it doesn't have any roof. It's just, it doesn't have any section that's a roof. And so that's why it's problematic. But having said that, there are some rabbis that in the discussion, some rabbis say it's okay and some rabbis say it's not okay. There you have it. Oh, I love this one. This is a sukkah, which is a tree house. And I've climbed up there, folks, and it's a bit of a hair-raising experience. And you have to ask yourself, is it okay? And the problem with this sukkah is that the branches of the tree cover the roof. And you can't have a roof which is connected to the ground. It's got to be cut off and not connected to anything that's actually growing for all kinds of reasons. So because the branches above this particular sukkah are coming from the tree, it is not kosher. If this tree house was perched at the very top of the tree, exposed to the sky, it would be okay. This is a sukkah on a boat, and it is okay. You can dwell in that tabernacle. A sukkah on top of a cart, on top of a vehicle, it's okay. And you may say, well, that's so old-fashioned, but I have actually seen a car with a skylight, with a roof that that you can open, and people have put branches on top of that, and hey presto, you've got your portable sukkah. Oh yeah, this is, I love this one. A sukkah on top of a camel. It's okay. You can go in there. Go on that. Enjoy yourselves.
So why, I think, Ellie, the question is how these traditions, didn't necessarily pass in Christianity. If you have any thoughts on that.
Right. So all of these nitty-gritty rules about the halakha, about the Jewish law, are very specific to people who are concerned with the minutiae of Jewish law. If you're looking for a general experience and feeling about having a sukkah, so that's a completely different experience where you wouldn't have to worry about the crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's. Yeah.
Very good. So let's move on to Shemitah. Now we started the Shemitah year, and we have a lot to talk about it. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a very special year this year, Jewish year, which started with Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, because every 7 years we mark the Shemitah year. And this year is one such year, where it says in the book of Exodus, chapter 23, Alyssa, would you like to read this?
Sure. For 6 years, you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops. But during the 7th year, let the land lie unplowed and unused. Then the poor among your people may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat what is left. And do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove.
Thank you. So the idea of Shemitah, this Hebrew word Shemitah, the translation is actually leaving your land to lie fallow. You have worked your land for 6 years, and in the 7th year, you are letting it rest. Can we just go to the next quote, please? This is from Leviticus chapter 25. And here we're not actually going to use that same word Shemitah. We're going to say, Alyssa?
The count of the year of the Jubilee, the count of 7 Sabbath years, 7 times 7 years, so that the 7 Sabbath years amount to a period of 49 years. And then they have the trumpet sounded everywhere on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur. You sound the trumpet throughout the land. And you consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It's a Jubilee year. Each of you is to return to your family property and to your own clan.
Okay, so I just want to explain this. In the book of Leviticus, it emphasizes that you've worked for 6 years and the 7th year will be a Sabbath. That is the word that is used, yishpot. It will be like a Shabbat, like a Sabbath. And that is in a parallel to the fact that every week we work for 6 days and on the 7th day we have the Sabbath. You have the parallel going on with the years. And again, in the 49th year, for 49 years, this will go on. And then you will have a Jubilee year, which is at the end of 7 times 7 sabbatical years. So but what's going on here? What are we doing? God commanded that we should let the land rest. We should let the land lie fallow. And that is what we are still experiencing here in Israel even today. We are experiencing the Shemitah year. And why do we have the Shemitah year? Well, you can ask yourself, what's it good for? You could say on the one hand, it's good for the land. You're letting it regenerate. You've worked it, you've eked all the goodness out of the soil, and now you want it to have a chance to reset itself, to press restart on the land and let it gain some nutrients after they've all been taken away. Or you could say that it's a faith question, because folks, in the Shemitah year, in the sabbatical year, you're not meant to work your land. So you have to ask yourself a question: if you're not working your land, where are you getting food from? This is a big, big issue, and it requires a great leap of faith. Now, you could say it's for educational purposes. You could say, as it says here in Leviticus, and also in Exodus, where you're also freeing, you're letting the land in the Jubilee year go back to its original owners. You're releasing your slaves. You could say that it's the great equalizer. There are so many things going on in Shemitah, and today, and in different parts of history, and when the Jews came back to Zion, where we have the quote from Nehemiah, the question was, could the Israelites cope with this very, very difficult set of laws? Could they actually manage to live with these laws? And Itamar, did you want to say something over here?
Yeah, maybe I'll add that Nehemiah, the story about Nehemiah is taking place in the Persian era, when the children of Israel are returning back from Babylon. And the picture that we added here is the picture of Rabbi Kook, a very important religious Zionist rabbi in Israel in the 20th century, visiting the new farms that were established in the early 20th century in the Galilee. And he's basically encouraging them and trying to find the solutions for the Shemitah in the early stage of the establishment of Israel. How do we deal with that when all the farms are so new? Like, we will collapse financially and we won't stand. So how do you do that? How do you return back to the land of Israel, but also showing your expression of faith by conducting the Shemitah?
Okay. Did we want to look at yes, thank you. So one of the workarounds that we employ in Israel today, and even Rav Kook was instrumental in putting this into place, is what's called this is a kosher certification of every restaurant in Israel. One of the workarounds is to have what's called a heter mechira, and you can see Itamar has circled in red the word Shemitah. to show that the restaurants are abiding by the laws. So as I said, one of the workarounds was to sell the land or parts of the land to a non-Jewish person,
Ellie, you got
and that
stuck,
was a
but I'll just
legal
complete this
loophole,
part.
which would
To
then
sell the
enable
land,
you to work the land
during the year of Shemitah
to work
to
the
a
land because it
non-Jewish
didn't
person.
belong to a
Ellie,
Jewish.
you were cut off for a moment. There was some glitch on your end.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Only on yours.
Sorry. So can I talk
No,
now?
she's fine.
Yeah. Now you're fine.
Okay, so one of the legal loopholes that was employed was the heter mechira, where you would in fact sell your land to a non-Jew and then you could continue to work on it because it didn't now belong to you, so you could work on it. And in fact, in Neot Kedumim, the Biblical Landscape Reserve, we have sold it part and parcel. We've sold it to our very wonderful Arab workers who come from the Arab village every day. And so that enables us to proceed in doing all the things that we want to do. Yeah.
Okay. Olives.
Okay, so what we wanted to do was to give you some practical examples of how Shemitah changes our day-to-day activities at the park. So here we have a beautiful olive tree, and when we're harvesting the olives, we read in the ancient sources, the Mishnah and the Talmud, it tells us the different things that you have to do in the Shemitah year. And I would say, if I was going to sum up what it tells us to do, is that you can't work your land on an industrial level as a business, but you can work your land for your own private use. Okay. Now, we wanted to show you this fabulous slide. This is actually the scroll, which is inside the mezuzah that is in the box on the door posts of, you may have seen them. Certainly if you visited Israel, there are decorative little boxes on the side of the doorposts, and inside those decorative boxes are a scroll that has been written on by a Torah scribe. And these two paragraphs are from the book of Deuteronomy, and I want to zoom in on where I pointed the arrow, where it says, "V'asafta degancha v'tirashcha v'yitzarecha," and you shall gather in your grain, your wine, and your oil. And the word for your oil is the yitzharecha. Yitzharecha. Do you want to say that, Alyssa, just because you've got a better accent than me?
Yitzharecha.
Okay, thank you. Which is from the root word, because we know that in Hebrew, everything's based on root words of 3 or 4 letters, based on the root word of tsahar. Now, the word tsahar, how do I know that word v'yitzharecha means oil? Because tsahar, Zohar, if you've heard of that book, the Zohar, means light. It means light. When Noah built his ark and he had a window in that ark, the Hebrew word for that window is Zohar. Zohar. The word in modern Hebrew for afternoon is Tzohorayim, which comes from this word, because in the afternoon you have lots and lots of light. So what I'm trying to say is that from the olive, you get oil, which gives you light. Itamar.
Brings us to the menorah. Okay, the menorah, they used to feed it, to fill the menorah with olive oil. And with that, I want to take you to the Mount of Olives. So this is a picture I took the Mount of Olives overlooking the Temple Mount. And today there are not too many olives, not as much, definitely not as much as there used to be over there. But the ones that exist until today are extremely ancient. We're talking about olive trees that are 700, maybe even 800 years old. They were examined by Italian experts. And what you see here is the Garden of Gethsemane. You can actually see this massive trunk just over here of an olive oil. It's hollow on the inside. We'll see a picture that will demonstrate that. And the olive that was produced on the Mount of Olives was the virgin olive oil, or the first press, basically. And in Hebrew, we call it mishcha. Mishcha, that's the name in Hebrew. The people that were anointed with mishcha, with this virgin olive oil, are called Mashiach. Mashiach there derives, this is the origin of the word Messiah in English, Mashiach, a person that was anointed. We're talking about priests and kings that were anointed with this virgin olive oil that was probably produced on the Mount of Olives. So this is a harvest of olives in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is a tree in the Garden of Gethsemane, just I think it's like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And over here, you can see two elements that I want to share with you. You can see the sweet child over here standing inside the trunk. You can see he's standing inside the trunk of this olive tree. So it is hollow from the inside. And on the other picture, you can see the shoots of olives just over here. So since ancient times, the olives are a symbol of a continuation of keeping a tradition and passing it on to the next generation. So for example, in the book of Psalms, it says that your sons or your children are like shoots of olives surrounding your table, meaning once the father pass away, no worries, the tradition will pass on and live on through the children. And in the context of Jesus, I want to just quote real briefly the book of Isaiah. There shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. So this is exactly what you see in this picture. We're talking about a society of farmers. They knew exactly what he's referring to. Okay, so this is a prophecy about Jesus, a descendant, of course, from the house of David. The next thing that I want to share with you, again, emphasizing what Eli just said, is on the industrial level. Yes, on the industrial level, we're not supposed to produce whatever we want to produce from the land. In this case, I want to show you a city, an ancient city. It's actually a biblical city and a later Hellenic city of Maresha. That's how it's called, Maresha. And in Maresha, there was an industrial, they produced olive oil in the industrial level and actually exported it out of Canaan, out of the land of Israel to Egypt. Okay, we're talking about at least 22 massive oil presses that were found over there. And what you see here is one of them. It's underground. It's actually located underground. This workshop is located underground. You can see the mill that was used to crush the olives just over here. Okay, this is how it looks like. Bet bad, we call it in Hebrew, a house of a beam, a wooden beam. So that's the actual industrial part. After they crushed the olives, they would put the olives in sacks, I guess.
That's, yeah.
Baskets.
Baskets.
Yeah, baskets maybe. Just over here, you can see that the wooden beam is actually sitting on it. It's already heavy. Not only that, they added weights that you see over here. So with these massive weights, they could crush the baskets and extract the oil from it. This is definitely not a virgin olive oil. We're talking about much bitter and lesser quality of oil. Still good, of course, but not as much as the mishcha, as the virgin olive oil, because it has this bitterness from the seeds. But yet, massive production of oil in Maresha and a few other cities in Israel. The next thing that I will point out is, what do you do during Shemitah? Oops, sorry. Let me just reorganize it. I know what happened. Okay, now you're able to see the black stone over here. Yeah. So there are also different vessels to crush olives on the as a personal use, just like that, or the bodeda. Eli, thank you very much for taking this beautiful picture. You can actually see a stone with a round stone to crush olives, let's say for a family or maybe a village. Okay, let's say definitely not to export to Egypt. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Okay, moving on real quick to almonds. Eli will do it real quick. This is the beautiful nature reserve of Sataf on the Judean mountains. The beautiful almond trees that will be in bloom, let's say a month and a half from now, approximately, maybe 2 months from now. And the almonds are also has a unique name and unique, it's also a unique place in our tradition. Almond, the word for almond in Hebrew is shaked, and this is from the book of Jeremiah. Elisa, maybe you can read it for us?
Sure. The word of the Lord came to me. What do you see, Jeremiah? I see the branch of an almond tree. Shaked, I replied. And the Lord said to me, you have seen correctly, for I am watching, shoked, to see that my word is fulfilled.
Yeah, so since ancient times, shaked is a symbol of patience. Okay, I'm watching, it's a symbol of patience. I have time. So the pictures on the right side is definitely not of flowers. What you see here is the wall of Jerusalem in the days of King Hezekiah. This is 2,700 years old wall and tower that was found in the Jewish border of Jerusalem. And it was built in the days of Hezekiah against the Assyrian siege, again, late 8th century BC. And 120 years later, God was patient and not destroy Jerusalem in the days of Hezekiah. He was patient enough, although the children of Israel have sinned and worship all kinds of idols. He was patient enough, and only 120 years later, in the days of Zedekiah and the kingdom of Babylon that came to Jerusalem, Jerusalem was destroyed, and we actually found remains of ashes and arrowheads just over there. So God has lots of patience, as you can see. It's also mentioned as the symbol of the tribe of Levi, the staff of Aaron, the high priest, and the leader, let's say, of the tribe of Levi was flourishing compared to all the other staffs that did not flourish at all, didn't bring any buds. And the staff of Aaron symbolizes how God chooses the priest, the families of the priest, the tribe of Levi, out of all the tribes. And with that, maybe Eli?
Yeah, so the almond, when it first grows, it has a soft green shell, as you can see, and will later develop a harder case. And in fact, it's a popular delicacy, certainly amongst the Arabs, to eat the green soft almonds when they're young. I like them too. They've got like a jellyish substance in the middle. And we know that when in Genesis 43, when Jacob was sending the boys down to Egypt to get food, he didn't know that Joseph was down there, but he wanted to send them with the most choice products of the land, the bounty of Israel. And one of his natural choice, as one of the 5 things that he sent down with them, was to send almonds, because they were encased in so many protective layers, they would definitely last the distance and be fine once they got there. Yeah.
Okay, good. So we would, Eli, we'll have to skip the beautiful cedar and hyssop, which is absolutely amazing. But maybe we want to circle back to Hanukkah that is coming up with the crocus.
Okay. Great. So what's blooming right now, very exciting in Israel, is this flower. It's called the winter crocus, or karkum in Hebrew. It's actually mentioned in the Song of Songs in chapter 4. And it's a very beautiful flower. And when it comes up first, when the petals are closed, it looks like a white candle. Which is very appropriate with the festival of Hanukkah approaching. And night falls very early in the wintertime. We've just changed our clocks. In 2 weeks, we're going to kindle the lights of Hanukkah, and the light will cast a warm glow on our windows out into the cold night. And these winter crocuses are like nature's candles, gleaming like beautiful beacons in the dark, in the hopefully rain-soaked earth. And so we hope that everybody has a safe rain-filled winter, and these flowers are a harbinger of good things to come.
Absolutely. So in order to take it, we're approaching the end, and I wanted to connected again with Eli to Hanukkah. We saw the beautiful crocus, and back to the menorah and the secret of the number 7 in Judaism and in Hebrew. So the number 7, the word for the number 7 in Hebrew is Sheva. Sheva, that's how we say it. And it's based on the idea that the world is created with rounds of 7, okay, different rounds of 7, secret rounds of 7. We don't really see 7 seasons, for example. We see 4 seasons, but there is something secret behind the natural world, which is based on the number 7. So the world was created in 6 days, and then a day of rest, a day to drop our possessions and to drop our grip in the world. And God is asking us to keep the covenant of the number 7. The name for the word for covenant is shvuah. So you see, again, it's all coming from the same root. Now, if you keep the covenant that is based on the number 7, you keep the Shabbat, and you keep the Shabbat for the land, the Shemitah, and you keep the Shabbat of the Shemitah, which is the Jubilee, and you release the slaves, you drop the debts, you give away the territories the lands that you purchased during the 49th year until the Jubilee. If you do all that, then you will be full, you will be satisfied, you will have Sova, you will have the 7 species of the land, the blessing of the land in abundance. So this is the idea that is standing behind the number 7 in Judaism. So with the note of having light, maybe we'll conclude with that. Elisa?
Yep, thank you, Itamar. Really appreciate that. And I want to send this over back to Joseph. I want to thank you, Itamar, and I want to thank you also, Ellie. I know a number of you will have questions. We already have one on the chat. Feel free to start writing them on there. We'll get to those questions in just a moment. Joseph?
Yeah, so thank you, Ellie and Itamar, for that great presentation. Yeah, so this is All Israel News virtual tour in partnership with Traveluia. And for all the readers who have joined us here. Some I probably know about All Israel News, and some may not, so I'll just explain a tad bit. So All Israel News was started by myself and Joel Rosenberg, who's the New York Times bestselling author and Middle East expert. And you can read about him on our website. He's the editor-in-chief. I'm the managing editor. I manage the team here in Israel. Yeah, so we started September 1st, 2020. So we're a little over a year. And so we're entering our 2nd year. And in addition to we'll say the hard news and the political analysis and insights and biblical perspectives of what's happening in Israel, we also want to be an educational site for the evangelical Christian world. And part of that is doing educational tours like this one. So we're very happy that we can partner with Traveluia. And just to give you a preview of what could become in 2022, we're going to start an expanded site. Right now it's called All Israel Tours, in which we're going to have multiple different tours for you to pick from different tour operators, including Traveluia and others, all different topics for you to learn more about Israel if you can come. So the virtual tours, as well as the tour packages, the physical tours, that if you want to, if your church isn't going to Israel, and say that Elisa Moed at Traveluia has a tour package of 7 to 10 days, and you'd like to join that tour, then that will be an option too. So it's not ready yet. It'll be launched probably in the first quarter of 2022. So look forward to that. Yes, so in the physical tours, usually what happens, if you come here, you're on a bus, and usually they say they run where Jesus walked. It's better to walk where Jesus walked, but some people run where Jesus walked. They get on the bus and off the bus and on the bus. So I believe so. Elisa said they have customized tour. You can walk. You can walk where Jesus walked, and have a customized tour for your group. So in Israel, when the tour finishes, it's very common and customary to give a tip to the driver. The driver and the tour guide. most of their income and salary comes from tips. And so in the same way that we're trying to replicate the physical experience virtually in terms of the tour presentation, we also want to replicate the tipping to appreciate the time of Itamar and Eli and Elisa. If you'd like to give a tip, you can give it to the PayPal Traveluia. And if you don't use PayPal and want to do by credit card, we can put the link to the donate. And
It's in the chat too.
yeah, just write us an email that, you know, $10 or $15 or $20 that you did on the credit card because you didn't want to use PayPal to all Israel News, just specify that it's for the Traveluia tip, and then we'll get that to them. So yeah, so you put the link in the chat. So yeah, it's much appreciated. The tip. Likewise, if you support the vision of All Israel News to be a source of truth and a trustworthy site from Israel to the Christian world. We're a very small staff and we would love to grow, do more content and more exclusive interviews and more human interest stories and more educational content and more videos. And we have a lot of plans, but you know, everything takes resources. So we're a nonprofit. We're a 501c3 tax exempt organization in the US. So if you're in the United States and would like to give, it's called Near East Media is our nonprofit organization. So you can give there and we'll be very appreciative and for tax purposes. So we look forward to having, so now we're gonna have the question and answer time. I'm gonna pass it back.
So yeah, we have a thank you so much, Joseph, and All Israel. We obviously would love this partnership, and again, thank you all for joining. I know there's a number of topics we want to go into, a couple hyssop and
just one more comment.
Yeah.
Some people write me emails a lot after this and say, is there going to be a recording? Yes, there's a recording. It'll be edited and it'll be posted on YouTube for all those who registered. So if your friend didn't make it, you can tell him or her that yes, there is a recording and it will be shown the YouTube link to all of you. So thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to questions. First of all, I want to address, Bernice had a question that goes back to Ellie, something that you said a while, but towards the beginning about Shemitah. The question is that what Hashem says about Shemitah? Is Israel totally supposed to walk in faith and in trust to God to make provision for his people? Can you clarify that?
Yes.
And then I want to move, then we want to move on to some hyssop and some other things that we didn't discuss. And we want to get into that too.
Yes, basically that's the short answer. And I saw that Itamar answered as well, 100%. Basically, you would hope that in the 6th year and in the other years, you would have an excellent crop to make sure that you would be able to survive in that 7th year. And in that 7th year, you're not just meant to go to the beach and sunbathe. You're meant to learn your Bible and reconnect with your God. Yeah.
That's the source of sabbatical. Taking a sabbatical, it's not just a holiday. Taking a sabbatical is, that's the origin of it in English. Because there was high demand for cedar and hyssop for a good reason.
Hyssop, right. Yes.
Okay, so how long have I got?
Yeah, keep going. That's okay.
We're say I'll add maybe 30 seconds. So it's fine.
All right. Fine. We have some time. We have some time.
Okay. So on the right is the cedar tree, the tallest tree that's mentioned in the Bible. We think of cedars of Lebanon. They were the trees that Solomon brought down to Jerusalem in order to build the temple. Very strong, very tall, very sturdy trees. And on the left, you have it looks very large, but it's actually a very low growing plant. This is the hyssop, which is called ezov in Hebrew. And we know that in Kings 1, chapter 4, King Solomon, it said, he spoke to the trees from the cedar in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the wall. And that was like showing how Solomon went from one extreme to the other, how it encapsulated all of nature, from the tallest tree that's mentioned to the very smallest, most modest shrub. And the hyssop is mentioned several times in the Bible, sometimes in unison together with the cedar tree. It was regarded as a very modest plant. It required very little water. It can grow out of a stone or a rock, and yet it gives you so much. In fact, I just want to remind everybody that hyssop in Arabic is called za'atar. You might have heard of za'atar. It's very trendy and popular to eat at the moment. It's delicious, but it also, we know that it also had lots of medicinal properties. And in the Bible, I would say it was regarded as a plant that could be used for purifying, for purification. We know that in Psalms, in chapter 51, it says, do you have that slide there, Isamar? We know that it says, oh, that's another good cedar tree. Chapter 51 of Psalms is all about David and the sin with Bathsheba, where he's very contrite and repentant. And he says, cleanse me with hyssop and I will be clean. Wash me and I will be whiter than snow. Again, because we know that the hyssop was associated with cleansing and purifying. And here you can see on the right-hand side, the flowers of the hyssop plant, and they are indeed white. Often you find that herbs have a purpley kind of flower, but the hyssop plant, the flowers are white. And we know also, I mean, there are other parts of the Bible where they mention hyssop. I don't know how many I can go into, but we know, can I say about, in Exodus, where we know after there were 10 plagues that were visited upon the Egyptians, and the 10th and most severe plague was the plague of the slaying of the firstborn. And the night before that was to happen, the children of Israel were commanded, this is all there in the book of Exodus, they were commanded to slaughter a sheep and to take the branch of the hyssop plant, to dip it into the blood and to paint their doorposts with the blood. Why the branch of the hyssop plant? Why dafka that plant? Because you could say, if you were just a scientist, you could say, you can see here on the left-hand side that the leaves are they have a lot of fine hairs and they're very fleshy. So it would be a great paintbrush. Or you could say that there was something about the fact that it cleanses and it purifies. So you want to use that plant in particular to paint your doorpost, to signal to the Lord that you believe that he will protect you and that the angel of death will pass over your household. That's where the name of the festival came from, Passover. And it's all connected, I believe, to the hyssop.
On that, I'll just add that the red heifer, when the red heifer was slayed on the Mount of Olives, if we'll go back to to the Mount of Olives over here, here it is. The red heifer was actually slayed approximately where this church Dominus Flevit is located today. And in that is actually a great demonstration of how Judaism see the repairing of the world is. They take, in order to purify from the dead, the worst force, let's say the death, in order to purify from the dead, people that, let's say, went to a funeral, for example, what they do is taking the tallest tree, the cedar tree, they take the hyssop, which is the smallest one, they will burn them with the ashes of the red heifer, the biggest animal, okay, the biggest animal. They will take a little bit of like a worm, a scarlet worm. So they take the biggest animal, the heifer, okay, and the smallest animal, the worm, scarlet worm, and they burn it together, put it in water. What is that water? The water is the soul of mankind, the soul of the people inside a vessel, a clay vessel, which is our body. And you see how it really surrounds all the universe, the trees, the plants, the animals, the big and the small, the biggest and the smallest of the animals, the biggest and the smallest of the plants, and it puts it together in the water, an inanimate object with the dirt, the clay. So you can see that in order to purify ourselves and elevate ourselves from death, we need to kind of have an ashes stirred in water that actually contain the entire world, entire universe together. So this is again the role of the cedar and hyssop also in purification.
Mhm.
Can I make one last point? Just because this is a group that I can tell are very interested in the biblical sources. I refer everybody a little bit of homework. Go to Leviticus chapters 13, 14, 15, where we talk about the leprosy and the sacrifice that was brought to once the leper wanted to rejoin the community. There were 5 ingredients in that sacrifice. The two important ones were the cedar tree and the hyssop plant. Again, bringing the symbol of haughtiness and the symbol of modesty, laying yourself bare before the Lord before you can rejoin the community.
Thank you, Ellie. Any more questions? If there anybody who has a question, you can unmute yourself or put it into the chat. I am actually going to put the link again for the tip jar for the guides. Just put it into the chat again, and I'm putting my email in case you have questions and want to know about the restrictions, how to get into Israel, or want to learn about tours. That's also in the chat. And if you have any questions, let us know. It's been great having you all on. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope this has been interesting. I hope it's been meaningful to you. And, you know, obviously we'd love any feedback you might have. We apologize again for the glitch. Zoom didn't want us to share, so we had to go off and go on again. And I appreciate the patience, everybody being ready to rejoin so quickly.